Hi guys. Chapter 18, Keanu Rubini. Top 4 reasons why my half-brother Chauncey is like Vladimir. Number 1, the smell. Dirty diapers and baby puke, enough said. Vladimir's terranium after the weekend is no perfume factory either. Number 2, the noise. Chauncey's howling has the edge in volume, but Vladimir's high-pitched squeaks are even more piercing. It goes without saying that both of them are spoiled by too much attention. That's Stepmonster's fault in Chauncey's case. For Vladimir, it's Miss Fountain's 7th graders, and lately us. When he wants somebody to feed him a dead cricket, which is all the time, the chirping and cheeping are at a frequency that feel like a miniature blender at the center of your brain. Number 3, the teeth. They both have 0. Okay, Vladimir probably has more than that, but you don't know that they're there until he nips you. And to be fair, Chauncey does have a couple of chompers breaking through, bottom front. It's pretty cute, actually. Number 4, the time suck. That's the biggest similarity between them. Dealing with Chauncey is a 25-hour-per-day job, mostly for Stepmonster, but also for Dad and me. If you leave him alone for 10 seconds, he'll find a way to stick his drool-covered finger into an electric outlet, light himself on fire, and roll down at least one flight of stairs. Vladimir is every bit as impossible to ignore. When he starts squeaking, you go running, and he's not satisfied with just anybody. These days, the attention he craves is from Aldo. Leave it to Vladimir to love the least lovable person in the whole school, except maybe Elaine. Maybe it's the red hair. It's hard to ignore. Anyway, I shouldn't really complain that Stepmonster is so distracted. If it wasn't for Chauncey, then she might call up the school to ask how I'm doing and get told, Kiana who? That's the last thing I need to get put in a regular class and have to break in 8 new teachers just when I'm starting to get the hang of Mr. Kermit. Now that Ribbit's doing real teaching, I don't even have to make things up when Dad and Stepmonster ask, how's school? I have something to tell them. There are things going on in room 117. Things beyond worksheets and crossword puzzles. Hang on a sec. Back up. My father stops me at dinner. What are these puffy tails you've been keep talking about? Some kind of scientific unit? Right, I stammer. Animal anatomy? If you're going to be dissecting some poor little bunny, I don't want to hear anything about it, Stepmonster puts in, shoveling strange bananas into Chauncey's waiting mouth. And we're going on a field trip tomorrow, remember? I move on quickly. To a rabbit laboratory? Dad asks. No, this is different. We're going to Terranova Motors as Jake Terranova's personal guest. I don't know what we're supposed to be learning there, but the class is actually pretty psyched about it. One of the downsides of being in SCS 8, besides the obvious, is that you're stuck in the same room all day, so the change of scenery will do us some good. Our 2 chaperones are Mr. Kermit and Miss Fountain. Mr. Kermit has no choice, but it's really nice of Miss Fountain to volunteer, since her own class will have to have a sub today. As it turns out, they get Mrs. Landsman, a.k.a. Dawn of the Dead. Poor Vladimir. If he squeaks too loud, she'll probably gut him with a protractor and barbecue him on a rotating spit in the home and careers room. The bus is just a minibus, and it's pretty uncomfortable with the whole class packed into one side and Elaine all by herself on the other. Aldo is getting mad because Barnstorm keeps thumping the back of his seat with one of his crutches. It doesn't bother Raheem, though. He falls asleep as soon as we make the right turn out of the school driveway. Mateo stands in the aisle, knees bent, working on his balance just like the Silver Surfer from Spider-Man. Miss Fountain seems pretty uncomfortable with the bad behavior, and especially the fact that Mr. Kermit isn't saying anything. So she tries to change the subject by talking about how SCS 8 should participate in the district science fair. She's always coming up with suggestions for our class, like the Good Bunnies thing, or inviting us to circle time, or help out with Vladimir. Sometimes Mr. Kermit lets her push him around a little, but not today. No, he says simply, I think this field trip has put him in a bad mood. It's pretty obvious that Jake Terranova isn't his favorite person. But it's a fantastic competition, Miss Fountain persists. Teams enter from every school in the district. There are prizes, and the first prize winners get an extra 10% added to their grades on the state science assessment. It's a win-win. Not for us, Mr. Kermit replies firmly. His expression says it all. Do these really look like the kind of kids who will come in first place at anything? It bugs me a little. Not that I'm dying to get mixed up in a science fair, me being a short-timer, but I'm used to Mr. Kermit sticking up for us, not writing us off. Maybe it's part of his bad mood. The other kids talk about Jake Terranova like he's some kind of superstar, and as we pull up to Terranova Motors, I finally understand why. It is the biggest car dealership I have ever seen. And that includes LA, where everything is kind of supersized. Mr. Kermit's ex-student owns all this. That's pretty cool, especially when Mr. Terranova himself comes out to welcome us. Hey guys, glad you could make it. Come on inside. Like we're longtime friends, not random middle schoolers getting our moment with the big boss. We tour the showroom first, which, I have to admit, is pretty fun. All the vehicles are shiny, new, and top of the line. We try out every seat in every car, front, back, and third row, and even climb into the payloads of the pickups. For the first time since blundering into SCS, I feel like I could be in any class of kids in the country, not Greenwich Middle School's dreaded Unteachables. Ribbit sees it too. His bloodshot eyes are half open, instead of the usual 25%. Or maybe he's just on the alert because Mr. Terranova is here, and this is enemy territory. Miss Fountain, the Prius driver, is looking disapprovingly at the giant SUVs and light trucks that dominate the showroom. When Mr. Terranova walks up to her, I'm wondering if she's going to lecture him on the environment. Instead, she says, "This is a wonderful thing you're doing. I don't care if you can tell. I don't know if you can tell, but some of these kids have special issues." You think? His grin is irresistible. My floor manager just pulled a sleeper out of a truck of that Cadillac. That's Raheem, Miss Fountain explains. He doesn't get enough sleep at home, but he's a talented artist, sensitive and observant. We've got their quirks. They're good kids, though. Okay, maybe good is too strong a word. Gotcha. He's watching Barnstorm poking tires with his crutches. Hey, Mr. Terranova, Parker approaches. I want to take the red Mustang out for a test drive. Right, very funny, kid. No, really, I have a license. Parker digs a mangled ID out of the pocket of his jeans. It's a provisional license, Parker, Miss Fountain reminds him gently. This is 100% farm business, Parker promises. I just remembered that I've got to swing home and pick up a load of turnips for the Safeway. Looking for a lifeline, she calls out, Mr. Kermit, I think it's time for lunch. It's hard to get a handle on what Ribbit thinks of all this. On one hand, it's obvious that he can't stand his former student because of what happened in the past. But on the other, that must have been forever ago. Mr. Terranova was in 7th grade, even younger than we are. He's an adult now, running a big business, and he's trying to make amends. Why can't Mr. Kermit see that? We brought bag lunches, but Mr. Terranova offered pizza for everyone in the dealership dining room. Only Ribbit turns him down. Like anything from his old nemesis would turn to poison as soon as it enters his mouth. The employees are very friendly, and we get to ask them questions. I want to know about fuel efficiency standards. Barnstorm wants to know, when you sell a car, do you get to keep the money? Aldo asks the lease specialist, how long did it take to grow that mustache? Elaine gets into the cookie platter set aside for Customer Appreciation Week. After lunch, we tour the service department. That's where the field trip starts to get really good. Motor vehicles are such a huge part of life, especially in a place like LA, where you have to drive pretty much everywhere. People take it for granted that their cars will work, like they're powered by some kind of magic. How often do we ever take a peek under the hood at the machinery that makes it happen? Mr. Terranova leads us onto a raised catwalk, and we can look down on at least a dozen vehicles on lifts in various stages of being taken apart and put back together again. The noise is a cacophony of revving engines, pneumatic tools, and a clang of metal on metal. The smell is a mix of oil and grease, and with a little bit of exhaust. No. Sorry about that. The smell of a mix of oil and grease with a little bit of exhaust, whatever the ventilation fan miss. Yet there's almost a kind of grace to it, a rhythm that's hard to resist. It feels productive, like a necessary work is being done. Parker is practically drooling, and even Aldo is leaning over the railing, fascinated. It's the first time I've ever seen him interested in something, and he looks older and more mature. Mateo is babbling about how the shop reminds him of the engine room of the USS Enterprise on Star Trek. Raheem is sketching furiously on a napkin from the lunchroom. Elaine is watching in rapt attention while double-fisting stolen cookies from her jacket pockets. Suddenly, she clutches the rail in distress. For a second, I wonder if she's trying to hype her reputation by ripping it free from the catwalk. But no, her cheeks are pink, her eyes terrified. Sharp, staccato, choking sounds reach me over the clamor of the shop. Mr. Kermit pounds on her back, but to no avail. I run behind Elaine and reach around her to perform the Heimlicher maneuver, positioning my hands below the ribcage like they told us in life-saving class back in California. Once, twice, no good. 3 times, heads up, bellows a wild voice. I glance over my shoulder just in time to see a crutch hurtling toward me in a home run swing. I drop to the metal floor of the catwalk a split second before the wooden shaft would have taken my head off. It slams across Elaine's broad back, and with that thud that momentarily drowns out the noisy shop, splits in 2. Everybody waits for her to crumble to the catwalk, unconscious, but that's not what happens. Elaine doesn't even flinch. Instead, a chunk of cookie comes flying out of her mouth. It sails over the rail and drops into the half-disassembled motor of a vintage Corvette. The mechanics look up in horror. "What was that?" Mr. Terranova asks urgently. I confirm that Elaine is no longer choking. "She's okay." The car dealer looks at me like I'm totally missing the point. "But what did she spit in the engine?" Elaine smacks her lips. "I think it was a ginger snap." The word is just a panic alarm to Jake. "Guys," he calls down to his team, "I want that engine taken apart and every piece wiped clean, now!" I'm mystified. What's so bad about a ginger snap? "Sugar," he exclaims in agony. "It's the last thing you want in a car engine. It dissolves in the gas and ends up everywhere. If word gets around that I sold a car with a sugared tank, I'm finished in this business." Mr. Kermit is beaming from ear to ear. It's the first time we've ever seen him so happy. And what did it take? Problems for Jake Terranova. I actually feel a little guilty. I saw Elaine pocketing those cookies, and I kept my mouth shut. I may be a short-timer, but you don't have to be at our school very long to know that Elaine rhymes with pain. The field trip breaks up soon after that. Mr. Terranova is focused on the Corvette, so he's not paying host anymore. Plus, Barnstorm is complaining about his mobility with only one crutch. Then you shouldn't have busted the other one over Elaine's head, Aldo tells him. It was her back, not her head, Barnstorm retorts. And I saved her life, man. She's better remember that while deciding who her next victim's going to be. You just cost yourself a puffy tail, Buster, Mr. Kermit snaps. Barnstorm is bitter. No fair. I save a life and I'm out of a crutch and a puffy tail? What kind of justice is that? He should earn a puffy tail for helping and lose it for being mean, Parker puts in. At least then he breaks even. We should all get puffy tails except Elaine, Aldo reasons translucently. Not barfing a cookie into a Corvette. This seems to be his idea of fairness. Elaine tosses a mild glance in Aldo's direction, and he decides to stand on the other side of the tall cargo van. It's too bad that such a great field trip has to end on a down note. But then, the minibus is waiting outside, so there's nothing to do but get on it. Halfway back to school, Miss Fountain gets a call on her cell phone. It's the dealership. There's a middle school boy asleep on the couch in the showroom. Mr. Kermit does a head count. "It's Raheem," he reports. "We have to go back and get him." And we turn around. "Wait," I frown at Miss Fountain. "How come they called you? I mean, why does Jake Terranova have your phone number?" She blushes the color of Chauncey's diaper rash. All right, that was chapter 18. Sorry, there was a little interruption in the middle there.